I think the way we speak to boys is very important. Pride is quite a significant emotion for males, and speaking to boys in a way that honors their pride is very important.
There have been multiple reports of how talking about emotions, it's considered to be not a school job anymore by a lot of
Right.
community. Um, I think it's been very prevalent in Florida specifically.
Families choose to send their children to our school. And
Yeah.
when they do that, they're signing up for what we believe in as a school. They're signing up for our mission, for our vision, and our core values. And
So what about the
right.
AI aspects? Have you seen the impact of AI in your school existing right now? And is there a disparity over there as well?
Yeah, we have seen AI, of course, become more of a prevalent tool that students are using, and they're going to use it whether we tell them to or not. So it's important for us as educators to teach them how to use it thoughtfully. And what we believe as educators is that it's more about the process and not the product. So AI can replace the product easy. It can.
So, welcome our fellow educators and school leaders. Welcome to TomoClub Podcast series, where I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder of TomoClub, and we talk to school leaders across the US to understand the evolving landscape of future of education. Today, we are privileged to host Chuck Maddox. He's a head of school at Boca Prep International School. It's a pre-kindergarten to grade 12 institution and based on IB curriculum and its commitment to global citizenship. So, Mr. Maddox, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. And I actually saw recently that you were presenting at Florida Council of Independent School, as it, right? How was it?
It was really good. I every year I present to aspiring administrators, people who are looking to jump into leadership, and so we present a variety of topics from resume building, how to prep for an interview, skills that you need to develop as a teacher should you want to move to a leadership role. And great presentation. The Florida Council of Independent Schools is the accreditation agency for a lot of private schools in Florida, and it's definitely the top tier agency to work with. So I'm thankful for my work with FCIS.
No, that's incredible. And I think you joined Boca very recently, right? Or you have been there
I
for.
did. Yeah, I just started in June, so I'm a few weeks in. It's been a good transition so far. I was in Tampa before and then moved back to South Florida, and I've loved my time here. The community is so warm and welcoming. I love being in an IB school. I'm passionate about the International Baccalaureate curriculum, and I'm looking forward to teachers coming in just a few days and then students about a week later.
Perfect. No, all the best for a new journey. And I'm sure you're gonna do really well. So,
Thank you.
today's topic is very unique. I am actually myself very intrigued to know more about it. So, today's topic is what's going on with boys in school. It's a rather different topic, but Chuck has some unique insights and unique interest in this segment and of how our boys are struggling more than girls in schools, and which is supported by data. So it's not something we are talking on a qualitative basis. And so before we dive into it, Chuck, I would love to know what got you into education business on day one, and is that reason still relevant today, or is it changed?
I kind of fell into education. I went to school thinking I was going to be a doctor and took a few science classes in my undergrad and realized that it's not my passion. It's not what I wanted to do. So I had to reflect and I had to think, well, what do I enjoy? I had some great teachers in high school. I really loved learning Spanish. I was pretty fluent by the time I graduated high school. And I like to travel. So I thought, well, why not be a Spanish teacher? So I fell into being a Spanish teacher and mostly because of the energy that you get from school. It's every day is different. No 2 days are the same, and students really keep things fresh and they keep things exciting, which is something that I enjoy. So through my years, I've worked in various positions as a Spanish teacher, as an academic dean, a head of middle school, and now the head of school at Boca Prep. And in every different role I've had, I still find that same passion is falling back to being with students and really enjoying the love they have for life, the energy, the excitement, how new things come up. There's new phrases being invented all the time that you just suddenly learn that kids are saying. So it really keeps things fresh and exciting, and that's why I find myself staying in education year after year.
Nice. I'm glad the reason that you started with is still persisting because, again, a lot of people rise up to the superintendent or the head of school level, but they do feel that element missing, what gets them excited. So
Right.
I'm glad you still have your calling intact.
Yeah, I do. And that's, I think, the benefit of independent school. You don't have as much red tape and bureaucracy you have to go through. So you can spend more time with students and you can lead a club or you can teach a class. There's still ways to make those connections, even though you are in a leadership role.
Interesting. But I have heard a lot of time that especially IB schools has a lot centralized structure in terms of curriculums and programs, and they cannot introduce anything by themselves unless it's approved by the centralized body. So how does that translate into your comfort in trying things out?
I would say that's true for 11th and 12th grade, which is the diploma program. It's very prescribed, and the IB tells you the topics you have to teach, and because that's when they're assessed, they take their exams the end of 12th grade. But in the middle years program, in grades 6 through 10, it's very free and open. So IB doesn't prescribe curriculum that we have to teach. It's more about how we teach the curriculum that we want. So it's all inquiry-driven instruction. Students are at the center; they're the center of what we do, and then we focus our teaching and learning around them. So we're able to try new ideas, new projects, different ways that we can really help students grow and be their best. So there is a lot of flexibility in the middle years program and even in the primary years program, that's the littles all the way to fifth grade. We do have some autonomy in what we can do. And that's what makes the IB so special because it is an international organization that is guiding schools around the globe, but they realize that schools are in their unique setting and they help schools have that flexibility to implement a curriculum they know is best for their population while using the IB framework to make sure that it's effective and research based.
Okay, that's definitely new information to me because I thought it's a very, tightly packed and controlled ecosystem. So coming to today's topic, you tell me what's going on with the boys.
Yeah, lots is going on with boys in school. And just a disclaimer before we start, I know all boys are not created equally. So as we talk in generalities for boys, there's such a spectrum, and I realize that there's a wide variety of boys and girls who come to our schools. But generally speaking, there's so much research that's showing that boys are failing at a faster rate and they're not as invested in school. And I think it's important as educators to dive in and see why that's happening and what we can learn from the research and the data, and then change our practices to adapt to meet where boys are and help them be successful.
Okay, no, makes sense. And what got you passionate about specifically thinking about boys as a problem statement?
Yeah, I've been in middle school most of my career. So I've taught middle school for maybe 13, 14 years. And in middle school, it generally has a bad reputation of students who are misbehaving and who are trying to find themselves and make smart choices. And it's often the boys who would end up in my office for doing something that is just, outrageous. It could be something that's just impulsive. They're not thinking, their brain isn't fully developed yet. And I found over my career that it is mostly boys who make these decisions that are not as sneaky, so they're more apparent and people can see what they're doing, and because of that, they get into trouble more. I've also noticed that boys tend to be less invested and involved in their own education. It seems like, generally speaking, they'd rather be anywhere else than in school at times. And girls typically enjoy learning. They enjoy coming to school. They can sit in class and they can listen and they don't feel antsy, like they have to move and get up.
Hmm.
But for boys, that's not necessarily true. So realizing that our schools are not necessarily built for every type of learner that we have. And I think there's things we need to do to help boys be successful because they are different. They have a different brain composition, they have different developmental stages, yet we're treating all of our students in the school the same.
Actually, that's interesting. So, do you have any compelling data points or any observable trends that indicates that boys are struggling more than girls in K-12?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of research that's been done recently, not only through the National Association of Independent Schools, but also just private researchers. And they've found that boys are twice as likely to say that school is a waste of time compared to girls. They're three times more likely to be expelled and two times more likely to be suspended. So when we think of those discipline facts right there, you can see that boys are either misbehaving more, or their misbehavior is so apparent they're being caught more than girls are. They're less likely to do their homework by about an hour per week compared to girls. The girls are ahead of boys in reading by one grade level. Young men attend and graduate from college much less than women when comparing men and women post graduation from high school. And in middle school specifically, boys were written up about 34% more often than girls. They would receive a referral to the office about 34% more times than girls. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we see that data. And it's also incumbent upon us as school leaders to then reflect on that and see what we can do in our own practices to make some change.
No, that is super interesting. Of course, adding to your initial point, we have to talk sometimes stereotypically, generally, to make patterns. It doesn't reflect individually on a per child. But if any school leader who's trying to improve a behavior or school climate, having this amount of data will be very eye opener to plan things out. So, what do you think is the reason? Why do you think these numbers are so grim for the boys more than the girls?
Yeah, it does sound like all hope is lost for boys when we talk about these statistics, but that's not true. They're not lost souls by any stretch. But I really think it starts in early development. It starts from a young age when there is such a significant change in brain development from boys to girls. And we see that at kindergarten. So around age 5 in the US, kids typically go to kindergarten, and girls are about 14% better prepared or more ready for kindergarten than boys are. We see that they don't have as many of those soft skills you need to be successful at an early age. Boys are often described as being impulsive, extra physical, high activity, and teachers see those words as issues that boys need to overcome. So
Right.
teachers don't necessarily think, well, how can I take a boy's high activity, impulsivity, and use it to benefit them in the classroom? They often try to squash that and to tell the students just sit down to listen. We think of a typical student and they just, they're sitting and they're listening and they're absorbing and they're working. And that's not always easy for boys. Their prefrontal cortex develops about 2 years after girls. So that's the decision-making part of your brain that really helps you have executive decision-making, helps you regulate some emotional stress and states. And so there are 2 years behind girls in that sense as well, which is another reason why we see them acting differently in school. It really starts from a young age, but I also think just as a society, we don't hold boys accountable to the same level we do girls. Sometimes we have the system that's built where schools are set for students to be successful by sitting, listening, doing, and that doesn't always work for everyone. So finding ways to help to hold boys accountable, but also help them be successful in the organizations that we're setting up and the schools that we're building would really help them in the future.
That's very interesting because I have a 1.5-year-old baby, and then he's a boy, and like literally, my wife is all about. I wish I had a daughter. She would have been much more calm, much more composed, and she would be listening to me. This boy is running all over the place and doesn't listen, and he's super active, super disturbing all the time. And I'm like, isn't that great? Like, if you have a calm down son at such an early age, why would you do that? But I,
Right.
like whatever you're saying is so I'm able to relate so hard right now, just thinking at such an early age. So are you recommending that the kindergarten age of a boy versus girl should be different? Should boys be sent to kindergarten at age 7?
I think that would be something to think about. Just myself, I'm an August birthday, and so I was right on that cutoff point of starting kindergarten as 5 or as 6. And my parents decided to have me wait, and I didn't start till age 6. And I think that made a difference. I think that me starting as what's typically a year older than what
Yeah.
boys usually start as helped me be more successful. I was able to have kind of a leg up on my brain development and the social skills that I needed. So I do think there's some thought behind having boys start at a different age. Just because we hit age 5 doesn't mean that every student in America needs to start kindergarten right then. You know your child the best. And if you aren't breaking any laws of like school start age, then I think it makes sense to consider having students start when they're ready for it and when they're ready to be successful in school.
Now you say it. So I grew up in India, and India, this new school year begins in April. And again,
Okay.
I was a December born baby. So I was usually 8 to 10 months older to all my other kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
And I never thought it like that, but I think it definitely helped me also. I was much more calmer. Like I still remember back in kindergarten, I used to get so hopeless looking at other kids, like, why are they showering? Why are they running? And I used to feel, I used to feel out of place. Like this is my core memory as a kindergarten kid. Can you believe it? Like,
Right.
and I still remember I used to feel a little icky looking at among all those kids, like who were like 8 or 10 months older, younger to me. So interesting.
Yeah,
That's
you even noticed it as a small child. That is interesting.
yeah. Um, so do you think like apart from academics, or like are there any specific areas, there's literacy, there is engagement, there's graduation rate, uh, where is this gap most pronounced? Where is this
I think
gap even wider?
Yeah, I think that boys eventually catch up to girls. I would say, just in my own personal experience from anecdotes and from my own observations in school all these years, that it seems like the later years of high school, there's less of a gap between boys and girls.
Hmm.
Those developmental ages and the developmental stages of puberty around 11, 10, 11 years old to about maybe 16, 17 is when you start to see some of the gap slowly get closer and get smaller. Uh, but I also think there's some unique aspects of schooling that happens between ages 11 and 17. So generally speaking, we don't have a lot of male teachers in elementary school.
Hmm.
It's mostly females who teach elementary. And I think that's part of it. The boys don't necessarily have that role model to look up to in school of how they should behave or what their expectations are. I think there's some research that says that female teachers are more likely than male teachers to view boys as disruptive. So
Hmm.
males are generally more patient with boys students because they can empathize with what they're going through. And if you don't have that in elementary school, that can be challenging for boys. So I think that's part of it as well, that maybe keeps the gap wider than it needs to be by not having a lot more male teachers in elementary. And that is trending down. So the percentage of males entering education is on the decline, which is troubling because I believe that students need representatives of all types of genders, of backgrounds, of ethnicities, races. They need to see people like them teaching them and empower at schools. And if we're seeing that just specifically males is declining and we're not having as many males enter education, I think that's worrisome.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that explains a lot of reasons of why there will be a disparity between boys and girls. And so, what do you think? What do we need to change in terms of pedagogy or classroom environment or classroom management to help the boys at the early stage? Because what you just said, this gap can very quickly become a bias to a stereotype to a trauma.
Hmm.
And I think that acceleration can happen very quickly, where I can start considering myself as disruptive and stop trying to improve myself because that's easy to label me as a child. So,
Right.
what do you recommend? What would be the different pedagogical tools or strategies that schools should try on to reduce this gap?
Yeah, I think there's things that we can do in school and out of school. I've recently read The Anxious Generation. It's kind
Yeah,
of a hot topic book these days,
I read it too. Yeah.
and discussing the idea that students don't really have as much free play, and they're not able just to troubleshoot what works well and what doesn't. Everything they do is so supervised, and parents or adults often come in and will correct behavior without letting the student self-correct. So I think at home we can give students or children more opportunities to really test boundaries and learn what's right and what's not right without an adult necessarily having to tell them, because that does make them more resilient in the future. So I think there's things we can do outside of school, but often that's not in our control. So as educators, what we can control is the way that we respond to students when issues happen in the classroom. So I think it's very important to hold boys to high standards, just like we would every student. We don't want to lower the bar for our boy students because we think they can't achieve it. They can achieve it. We have to help them get to the point that we're expecting them to be at. I think the way we speak to boys is very important. Pride is quite a significant emotion for males, and speaking to boys in a way that honors their pride is very important. So there's ways when we're frustrated, and as teachers, when we're feeling just overwhelmed or upset at a behavior that we're seeing, that we can come across as demeaning or as someone who's tearing down a student, and we might not mean to be doing that, but it happens. So remembering that we're the adult, they are the student, and we need to speak to them in a way that honors their pride and helps them be partners in that problem solving. So helping them asking them, what can you do differently in this situation to make a better choice? And having them be part of that solution instead of just telling them, you need to sit down and be quiet so I can continue teaching. But maybe they need to stand up in the back of the room and they're not going to be distracting, but they'll be quiet, but they can stand up. So I think helping them be partners in that problem solving is important. Using discipline to build character. There's a way you can discipline students while building up their character and not being demeaning or alienating them. Doing it privately so they're not in front of their friends. Often students are showing off because they want laughs and they want their friends to think they're funny. And there's a way to correct that behavior that doesn't ruin the friends that they have or maybe their reputation with their friends. And I think it's important for us, especially as males in education, to teach boys what it means to be a man. They're filled with so much media that isn't necessarily positive of what it means to be a man. They're listening to podcasters that aren't necessarily promoting strong values.
Yeah.
They see things on the internet that can drive them to one way or the other, and we need to be able to teach them what it means to be a man and how it's okay to be emotional and to be vulnerable and to speak how you're feeling and to share your emotions and feelings. There's things that we can model for our boy students to help them be a little more introspective instead of just acting as though men just need to be quiet and not have those emotions
Right.
and show how they're feeling.
No, that's totally true. I think even though we're trying to blur the line between boys and girls in school and treat them as one, there will be cultural and exterior factors like movies or like podcasters. Like I saw this brilliantly scary show, Adolescence. I don't know if you
Uh-huh.
heard about it. It's on Netflix
Yes.
about a UK school and how the child's psychology has been impacted by bullying. And as a boy, as a man, he was being bullied in a different way. Um, what But I also have this theory, like in the last couple of years, there have been multiple reports of how talking about emotions, it's considered to be not a school job anymore by a lot of
Right.
community. Um, I think it's been very prevalent in Florida specifically. So
Yeah.
there's been a total anti-social emotional learning campaign where talking about emotion will make my son, specifically my son, more soft than
Right.
he needs to be. So,
Right.
and we're not talking about the gender aspect. We're not talking about sexuality aspect. We're just talking about the emotional aspect, which is common to every human. So, how do you like if you have this ideology and if you're trying to implement that ideology in schools? Do you also face that kind of pushback around talking about emotions with kids or boys?
Yeah, I think it's important to balance it because I feel like parents definitely need to be partners in their students' education, and you don't want to do anything in a school setting that can alienate a parent or replace what they're trying to teach their child at home. So I
Yeah,
think that's important. One of the benefits of being in an independent school is families choose to send their children to our school. And
yeah,
when they do that, they're signing up for what we believe in as a school. They're signing up for our mission, for our vision, and our core values. And part of our core values are helping students be reflective, be inquirers, be open-minded. All that comes from the IB. And we're able to lean on the learner profile to really guide our social and emotional learning. So we're not teaching students to do anything that is outlandish or to do anything that might be polarizing, but we're helping them be reflective and to think about their own actions and their own emotions and what they can do differently to be a better learner in our school and to be a better scholar. So there's definitely a line, especially in Florida, like you said, of not wanting to push any sort of particular agenda or not wanting to teach things that might go against what families are implementing at home because it is a partnership with the family and the school. But thankfully, our families are supportive of what we do, and they agree to the learner profile, and they agree that students should be principled and should be caring and all those attributes that we look for. And we're able to have conversations that help students reach those goals of the learner profile through some of these conversations with boys and with girls, helping them all be the best versions of themselves.
Right. No, absolutely. Now let's talk the other way around. Of course, we already established there are curriculums and there are content which will alienate or will disengage boys more than girls because
Right.
represent boys in a certain degree or certain image that they may not feel relatable. So are there any specific contents or learning experiences that you have identified which resonates more strongly with them?
Yes, definitely hands-on learning. The boys tend to enjoy more than girls. So we have looked at our curriculum and I wouldn't say we're full project based, but we do lots of projects to help our curriculum and to help students learn. It's part of being inquiry driven. And so we're looking at that and seeing how can we transform what the product is and help students, specifically boys, create a product that they're going to be invested in and passionate about. So it's not necessarily the process isn't changing. We're still teaching them the process of how to reach their end goal, but the product that they're developing can change depending on their own interests. So in the IB, at the end of 10th grade, there's something called the personal project, and every 10th grader, at least in the United States, they're in 10th grade. Every 10th grader does a personal project, and it's kind of like a passion project where they get to decide what they want to research and what they want to create. They have to create something tangible. So in the past, we've had students create go-karts. We've had students write manuals on how to swing a golf club. We've had students do community service and open a babysitting agency. So there are all kinds of options that students are doing. And when they see that they are able to tackle something they really enjoy, the limits are endless. They produce such fantastic products. And they're learning so many skills along the way while they do that. So they're learning how to be entrepreneurial. They're learning how to use the design cycle to iterate and to create different versions of their product. And it's quite powerful. And that's something that the IB gives us is that personal project. So I think that's important to, especially for boys, to help incorporate those ideals into the curriculum beyond the personal project. How can we help them feel invested in what they're learning? Whether it's a choice novel, they get to read a novel that they really enjoy with more of a action-based plot line. Maybe it's a different research project that they can dive into with a historical figure that they're passionate about. So there's some different options that teachers have.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And that's interesting. What about the assessment methods? Like you mentioned, there are different learning curves for boys and versus girls. So shouldn't the assessment methods also evolve, which can judge them differently at the same
Yeah.
time together?
I think so. Yeah, I think, and this is for all students, boys and girls. I think we should give students the choice to be assessed in how they learn best and how they can retain information the best. It's important in our society to prepare students to be successful on a written examination, to do an oral examination, to answer different kinds of questions, multiple choice, short answer, essays, research papers. But at the same time, I think it's important to be true to the students that are in front of us and to use their skills. So if a student can verbally share with you the information that you're asking, but they can't get it on paper, they still know the information, whether they're showing it to you on paper or they're telling it to you face to face. And I think as educators, we should think about that of is there less value in a student giving you the information, just speaking to you in a conversation versus them writing it down on a piece of paper? Does that hold the same value in the knowledge that they're learning? Because I think that if students are able to communicate to you the information you're looking for, it doesn't necessarily matter how they're communicating it, they're communicating it. And if they're better doing it verbally, then we have some work to do on them doing it written and actually writing down their expression. But we can help them get to that goal of being a stronger writer by increasing their confidence and showing them that, yes, you do know it. Listen, I can hear you. You're telling me you've really studied and you know the information. Now let's see what we can do to help you get it on paper so you can also show it on that product as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that is relevant. If you can, again, that's tough for a lot of educators to do this differently at the same time equitably, because then they
Right.
need double the effort, double the tasks, more admin work. So
Yes. Yeah, it's differentiating instruction is not necessarily easy, but it's so important. And I always say to teachers that fair is not always equal. So just because Johnny is doing his report orally and Sally is doing hers written, that's not equal. They have different products that they're creating, and it might not be fair to the students, but it's the way that they both learn, and it's okay.
yeah, absolutely. And I also read that your school has like 50 plus nationality students, right?
We
So
do.
have you seen that? Okay, first of all, how do you deal with their unique point of views under the same roof? And do you see a commonality in boys' issues across the nationalities, or have you guys made any pattern out that part?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we are quite an international school. About 50% of our families are international, coming from countries from all over the world. So in the hallways, it's not uncommon to hear lots of different languages. You will hear Portuguese, Spanish, Arabic, all kinds of languages in the hallway, which is exciting. It's nice to be in an international environment here in South Florida. I think what we can lean back on, another component of the IB, is there's a tagline that they often use that says people with their differences can also be right. And so we are international, and with that comes lots of different perspectives and lots of different opinions on a variety of topics. But it's not necessarily I'm right, you're wrong. That's not how we treat each other. We have mutual respect and mutual understanding, and we understand that as an IB school, you can think one way, I can think one way, and we can both be right. It's not a right or a wrong. We can come together and understand our own perspectives. And so that's nice being in an IB school that is international to have that to fall back on. I think that it's a little bit of nature versus nurture with international students. So depending on how they were brought up, some families are more tech heavy. So students have spent more time on iPads or tablets or computers, video games. Some families are not. They're much more go outside, go play, ride your bike. And you can see a difference in those students, the way they were raised and the amount of time they spend online, which also influences how they behave in school and how they behave in class. Some families are much more firm on respect and how you speak to adults.
Yeah.
Some families are not. So you can also see that as well of how you treat adults and how you treat educators. So all those perspectives kind of come into this melting pot of Boca Prep. And we're able to help students be successful by meeting them where they are and helping fill in the gaps as we bring them through their education.
Mm. But do you still see an underlining commonality among the boys' issues, irrespective of the nationalities?
Yes, I would say generally speaking, yes. There's always outliers in populations, but generally, yes, I do see commonalities
Mm.
from different nationalities in what we were just discussing.
Yeah. So you brought up the technology aspect. So again, there's a very common, though there's a common notion that boys tend to be much more tech first, but
Right.
the recent report from Minecraft, it has a very fair proportion of boys and girls playing that game. Um, but what has been your observation about technology aspect? Do you see there's a more inclination of boys towards tech versus girls?
I think it's the way they use the tech that is different. So what I've seen is on breaks, at lunch, downtime, boys are more usually on their laptops playing games when they have some free time than girls. But they're usually much less likely to be on their phones. So girls generally have their phones out more during breaks and social times than boys do. And I also think the way they use technology is different. So girls sometimes use technology by like commenting on someone's post and maybe saying something hurtful or unkind. Boys generally might say that verbally while playing a video game where you have your headset on, you're talking to somebody, but it's not necessarily written where you can see it. So I think there's those differences between boys and girls. Um, but I wouldn't say that I've seen one use technology more than the other. I think the way they use it is different.
Hmm. No, makes sense. Of course, exposure is there. One-on-one devices with everyone now. So there is no
Yeah,
adoption issues. The usage is definitely different. So what about the
right.
AI aspects? Have you seen the impact of AI in your school existing right now? And is there a disparity over there as well?
Yeah, we have seen AI, of course, become more of a prevalent tool that students are using, and they're going to use it whether we tell them to or not. So it's important for us as educators to teach them how to use it thoughtfully. And what we believe as educators is that it's more about the process and not the product. So AI can replace the product easy. It can spit out an essay for you. It can generate answers to discussion questions. It can answer your math homework. There's so many products that it can give you, but you're losing out on the process of how you learn and how you build those skills. So our goal as teachers is to help students understand that the reason we're in school and the reason we're learning this material is to one, learn how to learn, but also to understand the material, not just to submit your final assignment or not just to submit your summative assessment or to submit your essay. That's not the point. The point is the journey along the way. And it's kind of like the forest, the trees analogy. It's hard for students to see that in the moment. They want the easy out and they want to just hand in this beautiful essay that they pulled from the internet. But what they're not realizing is that there's so much they missed in that journey along the way. And we're trying to help them learn that there's a way to use AI thoughtfully as more of a thought partner and not a thought replacer. But we also need to make sure that it's not replacing all of our hard work as we're kind of pushing ourselves through the curriculum. It can be our friend along the way and it can help, but it's not necessarily doing it for us.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think I love the aspect that you already understand the ethical use and the responsible use of AI, and explaining to the kids that it's not an outsourcing agent, but it's more like a research buddy or a critic that
Right.
as an assistant you can have. Uh, but how do
And
you?
if you think back to the history of education, there's always things that come up in schools that teachers, get so worried about. Like when computers first came out, now we have computers in schools. Teachers, well, how are we gonna teach them how to use a computer thoughtfully? It's just gonna take all their brain power away. And then Wikipedia comes out. Well, how are they gonna know that they can't just pull anything from the internet because it's not true? There's always something. There's always something new that's being introduced. And there's a moment of panic for educators, but then we get around to it and we realize that this isn't going anywhere. And now we have to adapt our practices and our teaching to help students still be successful with these new tools that keep coming.
Yeah. So have you guys doing it in a more ad hoc fashion, or you have a structured programming or some literacy classes on use of AI?
Yeah, we have in IB, we offer a class called Design Technology. So the design classes often are the venue in which students can learn how to use technology appropriately. So we have that we use in our curriculum. All of our teachers, we provide professional development to help them feel comfortable with using AI, so they know how to use it and they know how students are using it. We're a Google school, so we have dived headfirst into Gemini. So we use Gemini. We have the Pro version that's a little more powerful and it protects all of our data. So we're teaching teachers how to use that, and we will help students also learn prompt engineering and what you need to put in to get what you're looking for, because there's certain things that you can include in your prompts. So we're trying all different ways to help students be successful with AI and with Gemini in particular.
That's really cool. I think definitely you guys are ahead of a lot of other schools out there in addressing this new challenge. But how about the teachers? Like, are your teachers embracing it, or they're still on the fence?
It really varies. You could go from room to room and you'd get a different response from every teacher. Some are all in. They use it to benefit themselves in lesson planning, in discussion questions, in doing stations and putting out different kinds of activities. It's so powerful and it can really help teachers' jobs and make them a little bit easier. Some are a little more hesitant and they kind of feel like if I use something from AI, it's not as authentic as if I make it myself, and they feel like it's a bit of cheating. So there's definitely different perspectives. There's no requirement. We're not forcing teachers to use it, but obviously it can be powerful and it can make your workload better. And giving them those tools and strategies of how you can use it without feeling like it's overwhelming is something that we're working towards.
Beautiful. I think I'm glad. So we did cover up a bunch of aspects of this disparity of between boys and girls, and right from the biological development of the brain to an appropriate age, to the content, to the assessments, to student teachers training towards technology. So is there anything specific that we might have left that you want to share from your experience?
Yeah, I think teachers just need to pause and maybe close your eyes and think, what does a good student look like? And you're probably picturing someone sitting in a chair at a desk, doing what they're asked, listening to instruction. And that's typically what we think of good students. But there's so many different kinds of students out there compared to that one good student that we picture in our heads. So to really reflect on our own classrooms, on the structures and policies we have in place, on our behavior matrices and all the uh, different expectations we have of students, and to think, are we being equitable and helping boys and girls both succeed, knowing they have different brain compositions, knowing they're in different developmental stages, or can we change a few things here and there to make it easier and to make it better for boys or for girls, for both? Instead of treating them all as one, can we treat them as unique identities and individuals and help them be more successful?
No, absolutely. I think that has been a very phenomenal discussion, very unique perspective. I learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure people who's gonna listen to this podcast will definitely also learn a lot. And I think embracing the diversity is the way to go, to start giving them the support that they need. And I'm glad I think people out there like you are thinking about it and advocating for it. So thank you so much for your service.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for diving into this with me. And I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Perfect. So yeah, I'll definitely share this podcast with you and stay tuned.
Great.
Thank you for watching. Join our journey at TomoClub